All right, hey everyone, it's Andrew with Defiant Tactical Accessories, and I just want to share some learning points that I had from an outing I did over this weekend. This weekend, I went out with a friend to go just to kind of go shooting, and also to do some evaluation, some T&E, if you will, of the micro rig sample that I received last week. I did a video on that, and the weather wasn't great. It was rainy. It wasn't raining like in a downpour or anything, but it had been raining for several days. And I don't often go out for this sort of thing in that weather. I tend to go out in nicer weather. Um, it's probably like a lot of people, and um, so I I didn't have any, I guess you would say, major problems being out in the weather, but I did have some learning points. And what I want to share is sort of what I learned a little bit, and maybe that can help someone else, one of you who are listening to this video, to be better prepared for, not to use an overused term, but operating um, in inclement weather. So, so like I said, we went out. I was wearing a North Face jacket. It's not anything super tactical or anything. It's just I have a 3-in-1 jacket combo. It has an inner fleece, the outer shell, which is both wind and waterproof, and you can wear them individually or together, right? So it was in the low 60s, and so I didn't want a warming layer. I just went with my shell. So I wore that, and I went with my battle belt. Okay, but I've never really worn the two together. Typically, when I wear my belt like that, it's just I have a t-shirt and jeans or cargo pants or something on, right? So I don't often wear that with any sort of top that I can't tuck in. Well, I also typically use that with an inner belt, right? So it's gonna stay in place. I can wear that battle belt with suspenders, and I've done that on occasion. But I put it on with the suspender, so I knew that with the jacket I wouldn't be able to use the inner belt, or I didn't think I would be able to, right? So I just put the jacket on, zipped it up, pulled it down, and then put the belt on over top of it. And obviously that allows it to slide around. Okay. Um, so I put on my suspenders, and that held it in place better. But it shifted the holster because of the placement for the front hooks and the back on the suspenders for the suspender setup. The holster shifted, and it was higher up on my waist than it normally goes. Okay, that made it harder to access my pistol for drawing, because instead of reaching here, I was reaching like right here, right? Because it went around my waist higher. I had to adjust it for that. And number two, it actually twisted so that, again, because of where the suspenders strap in or connect to the belt, it moved the holster back a little further. So it wasn't where my natural reach was that I had practiced with muscle memory. So those are sort of minor things, and I think that sometimes when we use our equipment in less than ideal environments, we end up running into these little minor glitches that it's not like it ruined my day or something. It just made it harder, and something I had to figure out at the beginning of the day, right? Well, do I wear it with the suspenders or not? And okay, if it's shifting, do I need to move this hook somewhere else? Can I It was just something I had to figure out that I hadn't thought about before, that I hadn't run into before, because I don't typically wear it with like rain gear like that. Well, what I ended up doing is I took it off the suspenders and just kind of pulled up my jacket a little bit, and I was able to get my battle belt on my inner belt, and that worked well enough. And then I kind of draped the jacket down along the side of my battle belt. It didn't cover, obviously, like my pistol. It wasn't large enough for that. It did cover some of the other accessories and stuff. It did at times. That wasn't a huge problem. It's not like, it was covering up my mag. It did at one point cover my mags, but it wasn't a pain to get to, right? I was able to get around it. But another factor to that is that as it was raining, and it was raining pretty much the whole time for probably 4 or 5 hours that we were out there, that rain was coming down the jacket and it was doing its job and shedding that water and stopping from getting me wet. But you know where it went? Right to that battle belt. And that battle belt absorbed the water. Now I was a little worried that it would get heavy and start dragging on me, and it didn't really, but it was soaked by the time I was done. And that was another learning point that I had with integrating my equipment with wet weather gear. That belt got wet, and it did get heavier, and I didn't really think about, hey, if I've got this belt going over my outer shell, well, the water is going to be dripping down into the belt. And what am I going to do about that? And I didn't think about that. Now, if I had been out there for even longer, who knows? Perhaps it would have been so drenched that it really would have been weighing down on me and pulling my pants down. And then I really would need the suspenders. And now we have another problem. That is something I haven't fully thought about how I'm going to get around. You can wear battle belts and buy rain gear that would go over all of it. I mean, hell, I could have just put on a poncho. But then all of your gear is under a poncho. So, and it's going to be harder to get to your magazines or whatever ancillary gear you have because it's under a poncho. That's something I haven't really figured out how to solve yet. Perhaps for conditions like that, the answer is to not wear a battle belt. Maybe the answer is to wear just a dedicated suspender setup. Maybe the answer is to, revert to my tap or a different rig. But it didn't really work that well. But again, that's not something I would have thought about or encountered if I only went out on sunny days. And I typically do. I'm not saying that I'm the kind of person that's constantly out training in, adverse weather. And I should be. Or I should do it more. And that's something that I kind of learned. And you figure out these sorts of things by going and doing and getting out there. And that's how you find out, like, this little thing. And this is, again, sort of one of those nuanced things I mentioned. But these are things that you have to think through and figure out a system that works. And you don't want to necessarily be doing that if you're going out on some sort of, 4-day LARPing exercise. Or maybe you're getting ready to go play airsoft for, on a 4-day game or something, one of these large games they do. Or maybe you're going training or whatever, right? Or camping or hiking or whatever your use case is. You don't want to wait until you're out there doing it to find out, hey, this belt setup doesn't work that well when I have an outer layer on over it. I had and going on with the clothing question, that jacket did just fine, by the way. It was perfect. The only complaint I have about it is that it was kind of thin, very lightweight, very packable, but the area we were at has a ton of thorn bushes, and there were a couple of occasions where the thorn bushes caught it. They didn't tear it because I realized that I was caught in the thorn bush and I stopped and I unhooked myself or whatever. But I don't know if there is other more sturdier waterproof equipment that would probably serve me better. The second thing is, of course, I just was wearing I had jeans on, and that wasn't a great solution. I know that it was easy to obviously wear an impermeable layer on my top and leave my bottoms just wearing jeans. But in the weather, the way that it was, I was soaked pretty good through my jeans. And that's not a good way to be, especially if you're going to be out for a long period of time. Imagine if I had been out for all 4 of those days, right? Because, in fact, it's raining right now still. And it rained yesterday. And I was out Saturday. And it had rained Friday and Thursday before. So if it had been raining, if I'd been out for that entire period of time, that would not be great. I would have been really soaked. And that can lead to, injury, right? So that exposed to me that I have a gap in my preparedness as far as my wet weather gear goes. I need to figure out a better top and a better bottom, and preferably something that's not just a, commercial North Face black jacket, which is what it is, was what I was wearing. And my computer screen just went a weird color here. And then my boots. I was wearing Bates. I think they're called Tactical Sport or Sport Tactical boots. I love Bates boots. I love those boots in particular. They fit my foot really well. They're really comfortable for long-term wear. They require very little break-in my experience. I think the main complaint people sometimes have is a soft sole on those boots, but I love them. And so I wore them because of that. But obviously, my boots got wet, like really wet, really, really wet, because the ground was so soaked. They were getting rained on. We actually ended up getting stuck in the mud and had to call some friends out to come help get my friend's SUV out of the mud. And so I was tromping around in ruts and soft dirt. It was, I mean, my feet got really, really wet. And that brings up sort of another failure of my system, which is that my boots don't provide enough water resistance. Now, I don't know anything really about water-resistant boots. I don't know if I'm familiar with the material Gore-Tex. Perhaps that's the equipment that I need to be wearing. I need a Gore-Tex top and a Gore-Tex bottom, and I don't know if there are boots that are made of that kind of material, or if there's boot covers, or what I need, or gaiters, I think. But I have a gap in my preparedness in that regard. There's a really good video from, I think the channel's name is Brent0311. He goes over a lot of different kinds of infantry tactics and preparedness topics. It's really interesting and good, useful information. One of the things that he talks about in one of his videos, he specifically has a video, it's about 20 minutes long, that is focused on wet weather operations. And so he talks about some of these things. And I recommend you go take a look at it. Moving on from my clothing, one more note on the jacket, the North Face jacket. It kept my chest and like my stomach, my back, my shoulders and stuff really, really dry. It wasn't great on my arms. From my forearms forward, they were a little bit wet, and I don't know if that's because water just got through. I was doing some work trying to help get that Jeep or that vehicle unstuck, and so I don't know if the water got under somehow that way. But yeah, so there's that. With regards to the weapons we had, I'm a big believer in red dot optics and just scopes in general, right? I do use irons. I know how to use irons. I like optics because they make life easier. And unfortunately, optics don't like wet weather very much. I have expensive optics. I have a Trijicon RMR. That's a fairly expensive optic. I have middle of the road optics, and I have cheap optics. And everything that I had out there, from top to bottom, fogged up. The only exception I have to that is the RMR, but that's because it was in a Safari Lane holster with a hood. It didn't even gather much water in it unless I had it out shooting it, and when I did, it was horizontal, so it did fairly well in that regard. But the point is, I had to deal with fogging, and fogging makes it really hard to use optics. Like it made those weapons really hard to shoot, right? That's something that I haven't really resolved either. I had an ACOG on one of them. It's a TA-31. And I wasn't able to see through it, really, in order to shoot. Now, I could wipe it off and then try and shoot. And I had thought about that before going out there. I bought some fog wipes, like some anti-fog wipes. They did not do the job. They did not do the job. So I don't know if there's a different product I need to try. I've read about people using Rain-X, but I've seen a lot of, from what I've read on forums and other places online, some people seem to discourage the use of Rain-X on optics because it can damage the finish on the glass. So I'm hesitant to use that. I may, but I'm hesitant. I've read about cat crap, which looks like a paste, and maybe that will do the job. People have told me to try spitting. I've done that before for paintball. I've done that here, and it's frankly never worked. And people like to talk about it for scuba, and I don't know if there's a reason that it works for scuba and it doesn't work in those other applications, but I just don't think that that's really a good solution. So I've got to figure out a way to prevent that. But again, these are issues that I haven't really run into. And if I didn't have my equipment out in the conditions that I had it in, then I wouldn't have run into it. And I wouldn't know that I have these gaps. I'm leaning for the sighting question with the ACOG. I don't know why, but I didn't think about the fact that I have two other systems on there. Okay, I have a mounted red dot, and there's some backup irons. They're extremely large and so not great for distance shooting, but probably would have worked for the ranges I was shooting at, honestly. I didn't try using either of those, and I should have. But I'm honestly tempted to build a dedicated iron-sighted upper and to just have that here. And if I know I'm going out in a wet weather environment, I'm tempted to just take the iron-sighted upper, because iron sights don't get messed up by weather. The other option would be, I guess, to have an iron-sighted upper and an optic on a return to zero mount. That would probably be smarter, where in the event of inclement weather, because it doesn't matter if you have backup irons, right? And your optic fogs, you flip up your irons, but you can't see through your optic. It doesn't do you any good because you can't see. You can't see through the optic still. So I would really need a way to remove that optic and preferably return to zero once the weather clears up. I'm still working on a good solution for that problem, but perhaps with the ACOG being the way it is, I can deal with it like that, since I've got a couple of backup sighting options. For my AR9, which has just got a red dot on it, I forget the name of it. I want to say it's anyway, I don't remember. With that red dot on it, I may need a solution like that, because I can't see through it. Something to think about. And so, just again, the conclusions or the things that I want to point out here is that if you live in an area where you can expect a particular kind of adverse weather on a regular basis, like here in West Tennessee, okay, if I'm not mistaken, if you look at the weather statistics, like on average throughout 365-day a year, 1/3 of the year you can expect to have rain. 1/3. 1 out of every 3 days in West Tennessee there will be rainfall, which is a lot. And if you live in an area that's like that, then you need to think through these sorts of issues and use your equipment in these sorts of issues, in these sorts of environments, and know how to operate so that you aren't figuring out how your belt is going to interface with your wet weather gear. So you aren't finding out that, hey, I need impermeable pants too, and that your boots are just going to get soaked when you're out trying to do something, perhaps a legitimate, if you're law enforcement or search and rescue or something. You don't want to wait until you're out there, on a manhunt or something, or looking for someone that is hurt for hours to find out that your equipment is unsatisfactory. That's not the time to figure it out. The time to figure those things out is, even if you're just doing like I did, going out for a couple hours to go shoot or whatever. I almost canceled on this guy because I didn't want to go out in the nasty weather. But he did, and I'm glad we did, because I learned. And it reminded me of the importance of using your gear. You learn a lot no matter what the conditions are about how to use your gear and how it interfaces with you and your clothing. But this is something I haven't done in a long time, and so it was a learning lesson for me. I guess that's all I wanted to share. Go use your gear. Go out in the uncomfortable and the nasty, in the dark, in whatever conditions that you will run into wherever you live, and see what happens with your gear, and make sure that you know how to use it, so that you don't have to figure that out when you need it. That's that. It's Andrew with Defiant Tactical Accessories, and we'll catch you on the next one.